A single day added onto my sentence meant the difference between a normal jail and the unending nightmare of Pembina prison. I was supposed to get 364 days. That was the deal. But the judge didn't like my attitude, whatever the hell that meant. So he made it 365. Boom! 1 year was the minimum for my prison. My lawyer made a stink and a half, but it didn't do any good. It's not his fault. In fact, he's the one who is going to release this statement to the press or leak it online if the Guardian Corrections Group tries to get an injection on us. People have to know what happened in Pembina prison. I'm going to put this right out there and tell you that it was haunted. You think I'm joking, nuts, or lying? But you have no idea. Haunted prisons aren't anything like you imagine. Those places that advertise themselves and give you people tours are sick jokes compared to the real thing. It got so bad that you can actually look up CGG's official filings for Chapter 11. That shit put them out of business on their very first prison. And right there on their briefs, using an early statute of North Dakota from 1857 to file an insurance claim, it says, site of Pembina prison confirmed by governor's office and two notary publics witnessing in person to be afflicted by the supernatural such that continued business is impossible. If the first time the prison was closed for that reason either, but leeches kept buying it and reopening it, hoping to make a buck off the common man. And I was shoved into that hellhole without knowing the history even a single bit. Don't get me wrong, the building itself wasn't so bad, especially for something straight out of 1853. It was a big stone cube that was squat, heavy, and cramped, but way less sealed off than modern prisons. We could see a lot of the cells around us. There was only one main hallway per floor, and we're close enough to pass things between the bars and have some real human interaction. It could have been worse. There were 5 floors, and capacity for 500 prisoners. When I first got there, I had a bunch of cellmates, and I heard there were 2,000 guys locked up, and I believed it, but that soon changed. I didn't talk to anyone for the first 3 weeks. I'd never been to a real prison before, and I was messed up over it. I didn't want to accept that I would be in that place and stuck there with 3 other guys and myself for an entire year. The whole prison seemed full of feral men. The bottom floor would start screaming and hollering and panicking in the middle of the night all at once. We were on the top floor, but we could hear their screams echoing through that open old layout like they were right there with us. I just thought the prisoners on the bottom floor were all nuts until the guards weren't there to wake us up the first day of my 4th week. When I woke up in my corner without some asshole guard banging on the bars of the cell, I finally had to talk. I asked one of my cellmates, Dante, what was going on? And I'll never forget the fear in his voice as he said something that should have made us all incredibly happy. The guards are all gone, man. The prisoners were talking quietly between the cells and loudly between the floors through various whispers and shouts, but the most we could figure out was that something had happened on the first floor that made them all quit and protest. Sure, must have been the crazy screaming like that during the night, right? Except none of us could get any word from the bottom floor. It was dead silent down there. The guys on the second called out for hours. Someone was down there, they said, because I could hear shuffling footsteps walking around at random every so often, but whoever it was never said a single word. That was the first time Dante mentioned the crazy stories from the first floor. He muttered that he hoped none of that was true, but when I asked about it, he just shook his head. Nothing, man. None of it ever made sense. We were a little worried as the day wore on, and nobody came to let us for breakfast. And then nobody came to let us out for lunch. The time we usually got to spend outside in the yard came and went, and people began getting restless. In the cell to our left, Dante's friend Will began telling us guys to pass the word that we should all calm down and start sharing any food we had hauled away. I remember asking Dante, is it really that bad? They've denied meals and yard time for a day or 2 before, he told me, but the other 2 guys in our cell didn't look convinced. One of them said, but not like this. They made damn sure we knew what we did. They never just up and left. Someone handed us a piece of crusty old bread through the bars. It was much appreciated. The new guards didn't show up for work for another full day. We got plenty of yard time, that day from these new guys, but they seemed more confused than us. We all watched them from a distance as Will asked the guard what happened. The guard shrugged. I don't know, GCG was planning a premium for fast hires, so I signed up. What about the prisoners on the first floor? Will asked. We could still hear him shuffling around down there. We looked on the way out to the yard, but we couldn't see anyone. Huh? The guard frowned. Nobody in there. They all got transferred. Transferred? The hell that mean? It means doctor. Took 'em back. Returned to state custody since the company couldn't handle them. That made sense. If the floor had been full of nut jobs, then North Dakota's first local private prison company hardly had the experience to handle them. But these new guys didn't even have the skill to handle us. There were half as many guards as before, and they didn't know the routines or who the dangerous ones were among us. As a result, they were distant, scared, and forceful, all except one guy, Helen. Helen wasn't the first guard to treat us like human beings, but by then he was the only one around. He traded jokes while in the yard, never hit us, and looked us in the eye when he talked. He went around, found some paperwork to confirm the crazies had actually been transferred, but it took 3 months to get that info out of GCG. By the time he told us he heard back, we'd sort of forgotten the whole thing. 2 nights later, maybe 2 hours past lights out, the guys on the second floor began screaming. Dante leaped up and fell on one of our cellmates by accident before shouting, Shit, must be a fire." Other guys in our row began banging on the bars and shouting for the guards, but the uniforms charged past and headed downstairs without talking to us. We could hear them shouting orders down below and yelling in confusion. The prisoners' screams were clearer coming from the second, and it sounded like they were terrified of something in particular and wanted help. The sounds of the gates being slammed and people running reached after us. About 10 minutes of shouting, and then it was silent. We sat in the dark and waited until morning. When the new shift came in, they were surprised and confused, and Kellen came up to ask what happened. We told him what we knew, but he'd shown up and found open gates and an empty second floor. There was no indication what had happened, but he promised to check corporate and figure out if the absent prisoners had all been rapidly transferred again. Dante gripped the bars and make sure Kellen was looking at him. Please find out who the hell is walking around down there at night. Kellen blinked at that. I mean, I'm the day shift, so I don't know what I can do. But what do you mean? The prisoners are gone, Dante told him fiercely, but quietly. But the guys on the third floor said they still hear someone, maybe 2 or 3 someones, shuffling their feet every hour or so till morning. I guess I can go look right now. Dante reached through the bars and grabbed his uniform, something which usually got us a beating. Hear me? Do not go in there by yourself. Stay in the stairwell unless someone's with you. Callan nodded fearfully. It looked like he finally understood how spooked we were. He waved another gun off and Dante let go. But nothing more came of it for a whole reason. The night shift had quit, and more guards got hired at even a higher pay. Kellen in another uniform scoped out the first 2 floors, but found nothing. Dante thought it was because they were looking during the day, but he wasn't about to ask only friend to risk himself. It was maybe 3 months later. Yeah, I was halfway through my sentence, and I had taken up a drawing, so I had a pen and paper, and we woke up in the middle of the night to everyone on the 3rd floor screaming in absolute panic. This time we were less scared during the event itself. Will offered a guard racing past $500 from his commissary account if the man would come back and tell them what was going on. Dante listened intently, trying to hear individual screams from the 3rd floor over everyone else's, shouting in confusion. I wrote down my words he thought he heard. What I wrote down: Jesus Christ, killing him, God, let us out, coming this way. We weren't as scared when it happened because we lived through it twice before, but this time the long-term fear was much deeper. Now we knew for sure it was going to happen again, and any prisoners that the means began lawyering up and doing everything they could to transfer other prisons, even if it meant worse conditions. The problem was the North Dakota prison system was already overflowing, which was the whole reason GCG got started in the first place. So that every guy got out meant it was that much harder for the rest of us. But both of our cellmates transferred, giving us more space, so that was nice, but it was a small consolation.